Hey Optimancers, Chris here. I recently covered 5 weird rules in D&D, and I'm here today with 5 more weird rules. If there's any weird rules you would like me to cover, make sure to let me know in the comments down below. And yes, we have a DM, and when weird rules come up, good thing too, because they can help steer the ship through these weird rules and make rulings as needed to keep the game flowing smoothly. So, that said, let's look at 5 rules in D&D that, at least to me, just don't make sense. Hi, if you're enjoying this content and you would consider supporting it, you can do so through Patreon. You can find a link to my Patreon page in the video description. Today I want to thank some of my top level patrons: Martz, Math Guy Dave, Nathaniel McCauley, Nick Lutz, Nick Simmons, Odessian, PCZ, Pedro Vaca, Prometheo NTG, Ramen Goblin, Rohit, RVSP66, Rise Sajan Abraham, Sam S., Scott Dunnington, Scott Shields, Stephen Edmondson, Steve Bouvel, TUM, Tazel, Thomas Brero, TomTom, Tristan Bello, Vu, and Wesley Terpstra. Thank you all so much for your support. Let's get started. This video is sponsored by Steinhardt's Guide to the Eldritch Hunt. Steinhardt's Guide to the Eldritch Hunt is a new setting book for 5th edition that fuses Soulsborne inspiration with Lovecraftian horror to unleash on your table. Fight against absolutely demented foes, twisted abominations, and fallen fiends. Empower yourself as a hunter with blasphemous magic. Steal the powers of eldritch beings and unleash your bestial instincts. Beware of losing your humanity in the savagery of the hunt. To fight this, try out new racial options, from eldritch angels to living dolls. Use new weapons, cast new magics, unleash new powers in this setting, brought to you by Monkey DM. Check out the Kickstarter in the pinned link below. Okay, so the first one, I suspect, is an oversight on the designer's part. But we start out by looking at Barbarian Rage. It says you can enter Rage as a bonus action, and you gain the following benefits while raging if you aren't wearing heavy armor. Advantage on strength checks and saving throws, a little bit of bonus damage when you hit with a weapon, as long as you're using strength, and finally, the big one, the one that everyone knows about with Rage: you have resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage. And let's face it, when you rage, the feature everybody remembers is the resistance. The Barbarian is already working off a d12 hit points, then you add resistance, and that Barbarian is quite the tank to take down. It's unfortunate that you only get the benefit when you're raging and not wearing heavy armor, though. Except, no, because the most popular barbarian tends to be the bear totem barbarian, or more specifically, the totem warrior that chooses the bear spirit at level 3. That reads, while raging, you have resistance to all damage except psychic damage. And unlike the resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing, there's nothing here about not getting it if you're raging in heavy armor. So, want resistance and still want to wear heavy armor? Bear Totem has the loophole that gets all the resistances except for the one with no armor restriction. Okay, weird rule number 2. This is one I have to correct people in the comments on my videos all the time, even when I go over it specifically in the video. Why people can't get their heads around this one, I think, is probably because it doesn't make a lot of sense. So, according to the spellcasting rules in the player's handbook, this is how it works if the spell you want to cast has a casting time of a bonus action. A spell cast with a bonus action is especially swift. You must use a bonus action on your turn to cast a spell, provided that you haven't already taken a bonus action this turn. You can't cast another spell during the same turn, except for a cantrip with a casting time of 1 action. So here is how that works. If you cast a spell with your bonus action, you can't cast any other spell on the same turn, except for a cantrip with a casting time of 1 action. But what if you cast a cantrip with your bonus action? If you cast a spell with your bonus action, and yes, a cantrip is a spell, you can't cast any other spell on the same turn, except for a cantrip with a casting time of 1 action. But you can't cast 2-leveled spells on the same turn, right? If you cast a spell with your bonus action, you get the restriction. So you could cast a spell with your action, including a leveled spell, Then action surge and cast another spell with your action, including another leveled spell, and then cast a spell with a reaction, again another leveled spell, all on the same turn. And it makes no difference if they're cantrips or leveled spells. There is no rule that says you can't cast 2 leveled spells in a turn. That does not exist. The restriction only applies if you cast a spell with your bonus action. And if you do, it doesn't matter if you cast a cantrip or leveled spell with that bonus action. You are restricted to 1 action casting time cantrips for any other spells you cast on your turn. So, if you cast Shillelagh, you can't cast a leveled spell with your action. If you cast Fireball, then you action surge. You could cast another Fireball. And then you could do a counter spell on the same turn. That's 3 leveled spells on the same turn, and it is legal because you didn't cast a spell with your bonus action. Cast 1 spell with your bonus action, you can't do any of that. Does it make sense? No, of course not. But that's how it works. Okay, so for our third weird rule, we're going to look at conditions in the back of the player's handbook. Here is the frighten condition. Notice there are 2 bullet points here. That's important. It means each of these are handled separately. First, a frightened creature has disadvantage on ability checks and attack rolls while the source of its fear is within line of sight. Second, the creature can't willingly move closer to the source of its fear. Notice anything missing on the second bullet? Yeah, that's right. Nothing about the source of its fear being within line of sight. So if you can't see the source of your fear, you still can't willingly move closer to it. So what does that mean? Well, let's say you're exploring an ancient red dragon's lair. The dragon appears and uses its frightful presence on you, and you fail your saving throw. Let's say you don't even have a bonus to wisdom saving throw, so it's impossible for you to succeed. Well, then you are going to be frightened for the next minute. Now, you're no fool, so you run away. You scramble down a maze of tunnels. You've lost sight of the dragon. In fact, you're a bit turned around. You have no idea where the dragon is. Well, actually you do, because you step to the north, then you step to the south, then you step to the east, but when you try to step to the west, you find you can't do it, because you can't willingly move closer to the source of your fear. So that must be the direction that the dragon is in. Now, I think what's meant by the second point is that you can't knowingly move towards the source of your fear, and that's probably how I would rule it as a DM. It's just kind of weird they don't say that. Now for our fourth weird rule. This is the one I had to cover because it got more comments on my last weird rule video than any other. So let's talk about it now. We take out our player's handbook and we go to the section on weapons. And right at the bottom, under martial ranged weapons, we have the net. Costs 1 gold piece, doesn't do damage, weighs 3 pounds, and has the special and thrown properties, with a range of 5 feet for short range and 15 feet for long range. Okay, so what do those range numbers mean? Well, according to the rules, the range lists 2 numbers. The first is the weapon's normal range in feet, and the second indicates the long range. When attacking a target beyond the normal range, you have disadvantage on the attack roll. Now, I'm sure you're already aware of the rule from the combat chapter. When you make a ranged attack with a weapon, a spell, or some other means, you have disadvantage on the attack roll if you're within 5 feet of a hostile creature who can see you and who isn't incapacitated. Well, if you're throwing a net, I hope the enemy you're throwing it at can't see you or is incapacitated, because otherwise you have disadvantage. If you're within 5 feet, you have disadvantage for making a ranged attack that close, and if you're further than 5 feet, you have disadvantage for being too far away. A weapon that has disadvantage at any range. That is weird. But you know what's even weirder? If you want to throw the net within 5 feet of an enemy without disadvantage, what do? You take a feat that's called Crossbow Expert. So yeah, that's pretty weird too. Okay, so time for our fifth weird rule. So dark vision is something a lot of PCs have. Basically, you can see in dim light as if it's bright light, or in pure darkness as if it's dim light. And that makes sense, right? And basically, you can see normally in bright light, and you can see normally in dim light. But once you get to darkness, it's treated as dim light, and dim light in the game gives you disadvantage on your perception checks. So even if you have dark vision, pure darkness is still not easy to see in. Okay, but warlocks may find another way to see in the dark using an invocation. So let's go to our player's handbook to Warlock Invocations and look up Devil's Sight. You can see normally in magical darkness, both magical and non-magical, to a distance of 120 feet. Notice it doesn't say anything about dim light. That means as written, you can see normally in bright light, and you can see normally in darkness. But dim light, that in-between state, that's a problem. So you're in bright light and your vision is fine, it gets darker and it becomes harder to see, then it goes completely dark and now you're fine again. Now it's called Devil's Sight, so do devils have this weird interaction? No. Devils get a feature called Devil's Sight, but it says that magical darkness doesn't impede the devil's dark vision. So devil still sees in dim light as if it's bright light, and in darkness as if it's dim light, like anyone else with dark vision. The only difference is they see in magical darkness as if it's dim light as well. But a warlock with Devil's Sight has this weird reversal, where dim light imposes disadvantage and darkness is the same as bright light. Now, come on, you know that Jeremy Crawford has been asked about this. Let me quote you what he said. He said, "Yeah, we made a small error there. We didn't reference dark vision with the Warlock's Devil's Sight invocation because we don't know if the Warlock has dark vision in the first place. It was intended to work like the Devil's feature, so you can see in dim light as if it's bright light, or darkness, including magical darkness, as if it's dim light." Just kidding. Of course he didn't say that. Here's what he said. Devil's Sight is meant to be an eerie ability. Douse that candle so the dark powers will lend me sight. Is anyone getting the sense that maybe Jeremy Crawford once in a while has a mistake pointed out to him and then pretends it was intentional? No, me neither. And there we go. 5 more weird rules in D&D. And if you have more, put them in the comments down below and maybe I'll include them in my next Weird Rules video. Otherwise, until next time, I'm going to sit back, relax, and have some fun. D&D is for everyone. Thanks everybody, and I'll talk to you soon.